All right, Leslie, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to see all these beautiful faces. I'm excited to join this session on novels for today. We are honored to have a few authors with us who will be talking a little bit about themselves and their marvelous works. And also we'll be able to take some questions. I believe I heard Yolanda say that Terry would not be joining us. Is that correct? I want to make sure that I am not missing.
Yes, I
Okay,
believe we got an email from
okay,
her.
okay. Well, we'll say a prayer that all is well with her and her world. In the meantime, what I would like to do is officially introduce our two panelists. I'm going to share a little bit about their bio, and then I will ask them to share some fast and fun facts about themselves that, maybe some facts that are not in the bio that they would like to share before we jump into their work. So first up, we have Dr. Marianne Diorio, who is a widely published, award-winning author of fiction for both children and adults. She holds the PhD in French and the MFA in writing popular fiction. A former university professor, Marianne resides in New Jersey with her wonderful husband of 52 years. They are the blessed parents of two amazing daughters, a very smart son-in-law, and 6 rambunctious grandchildren. When not writing, Marianne loves to paint in oils and acrylics, to play the piano and mandolin, and to make up silly songs with her grandchildren. So what I'm hearing is that she is wonderfully gifted and talented. And you can learn more about her at her website, which I'm guessing at some point will pop up in the links in the chat. Her featured book tonight is Miracle in Milan. And our second esteemed guest is Sarah Hanks. Sarah Hanks has spent the last decade delightfully merging her two main passions, writing and equipping children, by writing a variety of Sunday school curricula. She wrote her first novel when she was 17 and continued to write fiction on the side until deciding to pursue writing professionally. She and her husband have 8 children, a couple of whom have inherited their mother's love for playing with words and crafting stories. Though Sarah dreams of a cabin by the beach, the family of 10 lives jammed together in beautiful chaos in St. Charles, Missouri. She buys earplugs and book. And her featured book today is Mercy Will Follow Me. So again, I want to first welcome both of you. Thank you for your time and your talents. And we look forward to just learning a little bit more about you today and your work. And that being said, I kind of forewarned you. I'll start with Dr. Diorio. Can you share anything else that you think would be fun for us to know about you before we jump into your novel, your featured book?
Thank you. First of all, please call me MaryAnn.
Okay.
Okay. And one thing that you may not have heard in the intro is that I am a kid at heart. I just love to goof off with my grandchildren and have lots of fun with children. And in fact, one of the greatest compliments I ever received was from a little 7-year-old. We used to have these children on our street who would come to visit me, and we would sit out on the front step and just chat. So one day the little guy came up to me and he said, "What grade are you in?" And I just thought that was the greatest compliment that I could have gotten. As far as different things that I love to do, first of all, people ask me often how to pronounce my name. So as I told Leslie, just think of Oreo cookies and you'll have no problem with that. Other fun things about me are that I am a trained sharpshooter and I certainly don't look like one. But I did have training at my husband's insistence, and that was a very fun experience too. Other than that, I'm just a normal mom and grandmom and just love writing. I did not intend to write. God called me to write when I was about 30 years old, and I can get into that more when you go on with your questions, Leslie.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that information. What about you, Sarah? What's a little known fact or something fun about you that you'd like to share?
Well, my bio says that I have 8 kids. Most people are like, oh my gosh, can't believe it. You don't look like you're old enough. I know, I still look like I'm a teenager, but I'm not. So I have 8 children. One of them is adopted. And we are actually in the process right now of going through our home study to adopt again. So I don't know if we're crazy or full of faith or what, but we're wanting to welcome another one. So I'm writing full time right now and teaching very part-time. I teach at a Christian school that is made up of 70% foreign exchange students, internationals, and I teach creative writing there. So that's very fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing that. I do see a message that Terry is coming. So as soon as she's on the line, we will bring her right into the conversation. In the meantime, let's go ahead and allow our featured authors to talk about their featured books. Why don't we start with Sarah this time? Can you tell us a little bit about Mercy Will Follow Me?
Sure. Mercy Will Follow Me is my featured book. It's actually book number 1 in a series. So Mercy's Song is book 2 that came out in June, and Mercy's Legacy will come out in January. So this is book 1 of 3 in a series. And actually, if you guys go to my website, which is sarah-hanks.com, there's a free Christmas story that you can download there, and it goes along with the historical fiction portion of this story. It can work as a standalone, so you don't have had to have read the series, but if you would like that free Christmas story, that is for you. Mercy Will Follow Me is a time slip. So it has a contemporary storyline, it has 2 contemporary protagonists, and then it has a historical fiction storyline woven in there as well. And it's about Natasha is a, this is Natasha, isn't she beautiful? Everybody tells me, oh, is that you? No, it's not me. But she seems to have it all. She seems to have this great, wonderful life. And then she has this great marriage. She finds herself pregnant with a child that is not her husband's and is a different race from her family. And so she is kind of thrust into this situation that she never thought she was going to be in, and she finds a community of people at this traditional Black church in the city that just totally envelop her with love and acceptance, and they help her walk out this journey of healing. And one of those women, Bethany, gives her a journal that was part of her family line of a mulatto slave from the 1800s. So that's where that historical fiction storyline comes in.
Oh, awesome. Sounds very intriguing. I love the depth of your story, of how you're describing and just that time slip. I am happy to announce that we do have our third author present now. Terry Overton has joined. I'm going to read her bio, and as I had the other 2 authors do, when I finish, we'll invite you to share a fun or fast fact about yourself that you would like everyone to know.
Okie doke.
Okay, so Terry Overton is a retired university professor of educational and school psychology. She has 2 doctorates, one in special education and the other in psychology. Her professional experience includes teaching public school, teaching at the university level, and being a college dean. She has 2 children and 6 grandchildren. Her writing and publication experiences include textbook and journal articles in the fields of special education and school psychology. She seeks to answer God's call to share the good news and grow the church by writing Christian books and devotionals. And her featured book this evening is Both Sides of the Border. So warm welcome to you, Terry, and let's hear it. What's something fun about you?
Thank you. I'm not sure if they let you know, but we're traveling. So I'm in a hotel room, and I just kind of dismissed my husband and dog to go take a walk while we do this. But anyway, so I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. We were out and about and just got back into the room. Okay, so for a fun fact, the book is Both Sides of the Border. And the reason that I wanted to write it is because I live on the border. And I had lived on the border for many years. And so the fun fact is we'd actually moved away from the border. And for about almost 2 years, I missed it so much that I thought, what else can you do? You can write about it. You can research about it. So I started writing this book, and then it just felt like it wasn't doing a lot, because I based it on and here's the fun fact, a lot of it's based on my experience there that happened like 15 years ago when I traveled through Mexico by myself to learn Spanish. And I was the only one on the tour group who didn't know any Spanish at all. And so there is a character in the book that, this happens to her. But anyway, so that's kind of the fun fact that I moved away. I missed it. It motivated me to write the book. But it wasn't until I was in church one Sunday and the pastor said, we're all supposed to be ambassadors for Christ. And I kept thinking, how can writing a book about some American woman who's touring Mexico, trying to learn how to speak Spanish, what does that have to do with being an ambassador for Christ? That it was just more almost like a autobiographical, and that nobody would like that but me, just because I was, recalling all these facts and places I've been. And so I prayed about that a lot and decided the only way to make it into something that would serve the purpose would be to write about both sides of the border. So that's how the book title came out. And I can tell you more about that.
Yeah, it sounds like really interesting how your bravery years ago to just travel out there by yourself. You have a whole new road now with this book that, was birthed from that experience. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. They say that a lot, that wherever you are right now, everything from that, from birth on got you here. And all of that's happened for a reason. And you should really embrace that when you're writing, because you can share that with someone else who might be traveling on a similar road, I guess.
Yeah, that I definitely see the truth in that. Okay. Let's go back to Marianne. Can you tell us a little bit about your featured book?
Yes. Book I'd like to share tonight is called Miracle in Milan. And just to give you a little background, this is a story about a young female auditor who discovers convincing evidence that the man she loves is an embezzler. The story takes place in Milan, Italy. And to give you a little background of why I write about Italy, my mother was from Italy. And in fact, when she came to America and I was born here, she did not know English at first. So I learned Italian as my mother tongue. And my mom and I spoke Italian all of our lives, all of my life, until she went home to be with the Lord. I also had the opportunity to live in Italy and to study there for a year. And I just fell in love with the country. So this novel and another trilogy I wrote called the Italian Chronicles were all set in Italy. The trilogy was set primarily in Sicily and was based on a true incident in my great-grandmother's life. And this book was based in northern Italy in the city of Milan. I'm sure you've all heard of that. And the reason I set it in that city is because Milan is the financial capital and the business center of Italy. So I thought that a story of romantic suspense and intrigue about embezzlement would do well in that setting. And I had a lot of fun writing it. I still have family in that part of Italy. We still have cousins there, and we have visited there several times. So I think it's important, if possible, to go to the place that will be the setting of your story, because you can get a great feel, not only for the culture, for the mentality, for the people. And then I was blessed with the ability to be able to communicate in Italian. So that really, I think, enhanced my understanding of the setting.
Excellent. I'm hoping that any aspiring writers in the audience are grabbing hold of these nuggets that we're hearing today. Everything from recognizing the journey that you've been on and how everything up until now really could be helping to feed a story, even to immersing yourself in the setting of a potential story. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this whole writing journey. Let's go back to Sarah. Can you share a little bit with us about your writing journey, specifically with this featured book?
Yeah, sure. So I had self-published a couple books before this, and when I came up with the idea for this book, I felt like I had gone through this health crisis. I felt completely empty. I felt like I didn't have anything left inside me to give. But I had somebody tell me, I really believe that God has more for you. God has a story for you to write. And I was like, I don't know what it is. I have nothing. But I lived 10 minutes away from Ferguson. And when everything was on fire, literally in Ferguson, there was actually a worship tent that was there that I know that the mainstream media didn't cover, but people from all different denominations and congregations were there worshiping. And there was a lot of good stuff going on. There were people just coming together, and people getting saved, people being healed, people being delivered, just healing, emotional healing, taking place. And there was an altar call. And for creatives, I went up, and I felt like the story just dropped inside of me there. And all of a sudden I felt like, okay, I have something to write now. And so that's where that came from. And it came from a desire really to help bring people together, and to help with empathy from both sides of the story, and help bring us together with the love of Christ and loving other people through Jesus's love. So that started me on the journey. Say start because it was a long journey. I needed a lot of help because I had to read a lot. I had to listen a lot, watch a lot. I had to get sensitivity readers. I had to do a lot of research for both the modern and historical lines. So it was quite a process, especially just getting started and writing that first book. But man, I feel like my heart has changed in the writing of this book. Like I've gone on a personal transformative journey, and I hope that my readers will gain that as well.
Awesomeness. What I'm hearing from you is this theme of reconciliation, and how to even approach that required openness, and in the process became transformative. So thank you so much for
Great
just
summary.
sharing that journey with us. What about you, Terry? I know you shared a little bit already about your journey on both sides of the border. Is there anything else you want to add just about your book and the journey that led you to those pages?
Yes, in the book, I said I kind of started writing it just from one side, and I realized that wasn't going to do much as far as helping people understand the problems from a Christian worldview, because that's what my goal is. And maybe this goes back to being a professor, I don't know, but I always want to teach when I'm writing in a way that people become more aware of things maybe they hadn't thought about before. And so living on the border and seeing so much in the media about what was happening in the border, and this was, the actual book I started writing it like 2 years ago. So it was before COVID even. It was before the Haitians. It was before these swarms that we have now coming over in Texas. And I didn't tell you that I wrote the book while I was away, but then I moved back here because I miss being on the border so much. And for so many years, the students I taught were probably 95% Hispanic, some that were crossing the border daily to come to school. So there you really get to learn the life and what's going on with those students. And so that's when I decided to include the other half of the book, which is another lady taking a journey, but she's coming up from Honduras, riding the death train with her two younger brothers, as they're seeking to get to Brownsville. And the other woman is touring Mexico, as I did, as a tourist. And that was the first year I was down there, so I didn't really understand the other side of Mexico. So you get to see that side of Mexico from the lady that's coming up. Her name is Dolores, who's coming up from Honduras. So you're exposed to the cartels, you're exposed to human trafficking. She sees people die, her brother is hurt. You see all of these things. At the same time, the American tourist is in the same towns, dancing, dining, completely unaware of what people are struggling with and struggling through. And I don't want to spoil it, but they do eventually get together. There was a lot of catastrophes that happened and crises for both of the women. And the woman coming up from Honduras already begins from a very strong faith. And the Texas woman, much like myself all those years ago, still grappling with, I guess, trying to learn how to strengthen your own faith. You know, what can you do to become a better Christian? And so through the story, when they eventually meet, then the woman from Texas is actually able to have a more mature Christian faith. But the purpose is really to show both sides. And the reviews I've gotten and people that have read it have said they hadn't ever thought about it from the other side. And that was the point of the book. I just want people to open their eyes and see there's so many struggles over there. And at the same time over here, we really have a problem with security. And so, you know, what does a Christian do? And I get a lot of flack from that. Some people say, well, you're supposed to always love everybody, no matter what, period. And I'm like, well, that means love my neighbor next door, and I don't want to expose them to harm. So that's another part of loving your neighbor, you know, is keeping everybody safe. So it's a dilemma, and I know a lot of Christians struggle with it.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you are exploring a complex theme. You know, it's like and doing so in a way where there's a collision of two worlds. But what I'm hearing from you is that Christ is at the center,
Yes.
with the goal of really demonstrating compassion and empathy. So, you know, thank you for, again, your bravery. I'm hearing this theme of bravery from you to take on such an important theme in your work.
It's not, you know, I had faculty members that I worked with at the university who actually still go to Mexico a bit and try to help people to get away from cartels, and they're the brave ones. I mean, when I hear the stories, they are, you know, being threatened with their own lives. So it's ongoing, and you don't see that in the media.
Yeah.
Nobody's telling you that over here, you know, that it's an ongoing struggle. But anyway, that was the point of bringing all that to light in the book.
Okay. All right, MaryAnn, what about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your writing journey?
Yes, Sarah really made a powerful statement about how the writing journey has transformed her. And years ago, when I first started writing fiction, I had a mentor who said something to me that I never forgot. She said, you will discover that this is really not about learning how to write a novel. This is going to be a spiritual journey for you to learn about who you are in Christ and to draw you closer to Jesus. And that's exactly what writing fiction has been for me. I never intended to write fiction. I actually studied for a career as a university professor of romance languages, which is what I did for a while. And then when I was 30 years old, I began to sense this desire to write. And I really didn't know exactly why I sensed that, because I was very happy in what I was doing. But the desire kept growing and growing. And I said, Lord, is this from you? If it is, please increase it. If it's not, take it away, because I can't stand it. So the desire increased and just got stronger and stronger. And through a series of really miraculous circumstances, the Lord confirmed to me that he had called me to write. So I started out writing nonfiction, and I did that for several years. And then I guess about midway through, I began sensing this desire to write fiction, to write stories. And writing stories has become my passion, because whereas nonfiction stimulates the intellect and appeals to the intellect, fiction appeals to the heart. And that's where transformation really takes place. And as Sarah said, she was transformed. So I have found that the transformation may not necessarily be entirely in the reader. The transformation for me was in me, and that by writing fiction, I have come to a much deeper relationship with the Lord. And those of you who write probably experience what I'm going to say, but there have been times literally where I feel that the Holy Spirit is just hovering over me, just leading me and guiding me at times when, you know, I may be stuck and not know what the next thing to write is. I just pray and I just sense that God is directing this, and that all I am really is a scribe. I feel as though the story is coming from God's heart and I'm just the instrument to put it down on paper on the computer. So to answer your original question, the writing journey for me has been transformative in that it has really helped to deepen my relationship with the Lord, and I'm so grateful for that.
Wow, it sounds like in the process of ministering to readers, you're being ministered to as well.
Exactly.
What a powerful place to be.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm very
I want
thankful.
to, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I said I'm very thankful.
I want our audience to begin to think of their specific questions that they would like to ask. And while you're thinking, I'm going to throw one in here to any of our panelists or all of you if you want to answer. I'm loving hearing you talk about this transformative journey that you're taking as an author. I'm wondering, as you are writing the words on the pages, who are you picturing as your audience, and what are you hoping they take away from your featured story? And this is for anyone.
Well, I know for both sides of the border, I was just thinking of anyone who's interested in these issues, male, female, although it's a women, primarily, I guess, women's fiction book, but it's also kind of a cross genre. I do write some middle grade books also for kids. And, I sometimes picture my own grandkids as if they would enjoy this and try to stay with their sense of humor and things like that. So I don't know. But as far as what you were saying, Marianne, about like you feel the Holy Spirit, I want to know if any of the other authors, are you ever like awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning because you've got to get up? You just got it, you just received it and you have to get up and write it. And I do. And I don't know if y'all do that too, but that drives my husband crazy. He's like, what are you doing getting up? You do feel like sometimes you are being kind of led or guided, or even sometimes there's a message there that you just got and you need to get up and work with that.
Yes, that's happened to me. In fact, I keep a notebook by my bed
Mhm.
because I often get ideas in the middle of the night. And there have been times when I felt compelled to get up and write.
Uh-huh. Yeah, especially if I'm kind of right in the middle of a project and I know where it's got to go. And I was just kind of too tired and I went to bed. And then as soon as I get like 4 hours of sleep, it's like, okay, get up. You got to go finish it.
Okay. Sarah or Marianne, did you want to answer that question as well, just in terms of, how are you envisioning your audience and what is it that you're hoping that your readers take away?
I'm sorry,
Sarah,
my internet just went out, and so I just got back on.
Well, welcome back.
So I missed that. Can you say the question again? What you're hoping that your readers will take away?
Yeah, just, along that lines, as a writer, as you're putting those words down on the paper and you're picturing your book in someone's hand, tell me about that reader and what it is that you're hoping their heart hears.
Well, fiction, I think, is amazing in its ability. We say walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, and that's what fiction does for us. That's what it does as a writer. As a writer, you're actually putting yourself in that person's head and you're walking a mile in their shoes, right? You're walking through their life. And as a reader, you're putting yourself into that character's head. So you have the ability to experience a life or a background that you would never actually get to experience through fiction. And I think that's amazing. And so that's what I strive, that's what I'm hoping to do for readers, is help them awaken empathy by getting to walk in somebody else's shoes that maybe they would never have thought to even consider. What the other side, like you were talking about on the other side of the border, what the other side might be thinking and feeling, and their backgrounds and all the different factors that go into their life. But through fiction, we can experience it, and then our hearts grow a little bit. We have a little bit more empathy, and when we meet somebody of a similar background or somebody that's different than us in person, we have a little bit extra space there to be able to love them in a better way.
Awesomeness.
That's great.
Marianne, I wanted to give you space to answer as well too, if you like.
When we write, of course, we write for our readers. And as I write, my number one goal is to hear God's heart, because he knows who is going to read my books and what they need. And my number one goal is to point my readers to Jesus as the answer to whatever problem they are going through at the time. Also, readers read not just for entertainment and not for escape, although sometimes they may, but I think that readers really read to find answers to situations that they may be facing, even if the situation is not the exact thing they're going through. When they read about a character who has overcome through the power of Christ and through faith in Christ, that gives the reader hope that maybe I too can overcome through the power of Christ. And if a reader is depressed or discouraged, fiction can help the reader overcome that, thinking that, you know, if this character can do it, I can do it too. So my goal is ultimately to point the reader to Jesus Christ as the solution to whatever problem the reader is facing while he or she is reading my book.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
Just checking in with the chat for a second to see if there's any question. Feel free if you have any. This is the time. In the meantime, you know, another question for our panel. As a fiction writer myself, I love the genre of fiction, especially as a Christian fiction author. You know, you think about in the New Testament, Jesus spoke through parables, which to me says a lot about the power of story. But not only did he speak through parables, he often used what would have been current context for the stories that, you know, the listeners could hear. So that really applies when we think about our panel right now, novels for today. You're using current issues and current settings to share a message, whether it's about reconciliation or empathy or adventure or suspense. So my question to you is, the themes that you have approached in your books, are these themes that you want to continue to approach in your novels in the future, or are there other issues that you are hoping to really tackle in your work? And again, this is open to anyone.
Okay, well, I'll try that answer. Every story has an internal story and an external story. The external story is the plot of the story. So in contemporary fiction, the plot is contemporary. In other words, you'll see modern technology in the plot, cell phones, you know, internet, that kind of thing. But the internal story is the story about what is going on inside the character's heart. And the heart has issues that are universal and that are eternal. They apply to all ages. So we may write in a contemporary setting, but the issues about which we write can happen at any time in human history, because the heart really is where the struggle occurs. And themes like forgiveness, reconciliation, challenges in relationships, they have happened throughout human history.
Okay. Any other thoughts to my question, just in terms of like, are there any other themes or stories that you are feeling very passionate that you want to be able to get out on the page?
Well, for the writers in the group, I hate to answer a question with a question, but I'm going to kind of ask a question and then give you the answer. Do you ever wonder if your writing makes a difference? The reason I'm asking that is because I've wondered that a lot. And so I again decided to write about it. And now I've got a little series so far, up to 2 books that will be coming out in the spring. And it is about a Christian writer, female, who wonders that, is her writing good enough? Does anybody hear it? will it make a difference to anybody? And so that's, kind of what I grapple with. And I don't know if you have that or not, but it's different than anything I've ever done. And the whole thing is very humorous. I mean, I had some very humorous women in there that every time I read it, I laugh myself. So I don't know, but it gets to that question of what's the purpose of our writing, and does it make a difference? Does it fall into the right hands? I pray that a lot. I want this to fall into the right hands, to the right reader.
Okay, and as I listen to you talk, it kind of piggybacks on what Marianne was just saying, that there's some themes that are just universal to the human experience. And as a writer who is aspiring to, write the next, bestseller, or maybe questioning, their potential or confidence in doing so, it sounds like you are going to be speaking to that as well.
Yeah, a little bit. And of course, there are results that happen in places that this particular writer doesn't know about, but you see that in the story, how it is making a difference. But we might not always see that or know that, or even hear from our readers, what a book meant to them.
Okay. I do see we have a question in the chat. Before I move on to that question, I did want to give Sarah a chance to answer. And it's fine if you don't have an answer, but just checking in to see if there was anything you wanted to share.
So I write time slips, and I might, I've written my self-published books earlier on were contemporary, but right now I'm writing time slips. And so I find that MaryAnn, like that the historical storyline that runs alongside the contemporary storyline, there's so much more alike. The setting is different, and what's going on outside is different, but in the heart, what's going on inside of your characters are a lot alike. And I get so many story ideas through reading about history. It's just, I just keep reading and filling my notebook with all these different ones that I can do. And then what's going on now that kind of mirrors what was going on in history. So it's kind of fun, because nothing happens in a vacuum. And just like in Mercy will follow me, the events that are happening around racial reconciliation right now, around that subject, they did not happen in a vacuum. And so looking back in history and looking at these things and kind of figuring out, okay, how did we get here, and now how can we move forward in a better way, and pointing to Jesus through that all. So I wouldn't say that there's like one specific thing I want to tackle. I mean, I get story ideas all the time. And it's a lot about just areas where especially in the church, we can butt heads or see things differently, where we're not coming into unity, and figuring out like, okay, how could I weave a story around these topics?
Okay.
Leslie?
Yes.
If I may, I'd like to address Terry's question about, do you feel that your writing is making a difference? I think that God has built into each one of us a desire for significance. We all want our lives to count. And I think that if God has called you to write, then you write, and then you let him get your writing to the people who need to read it. So we often talk about, what is success? I think success is being in the center of God's will, doing what he created you to do. And when we do that, we don't really worry about where our writing goes. We leave that up to God. I mean, certainly we do our part in getting the word out there. But at the same time, I think that we just trust him to use what we write to reach the people who need to read it. And so I think that we can rest in that and be at peace in that as long as we are being obedient to write what he's called us to write, then he will see to it in his own way to get that writing to where it belongs. And that gives our lives meaning and purpose, because we know we're obeying the Lord.
Yes, powerful words. Okay. We are in the final really 8 minutes of our discussion, and we do have some questions from our audience. So I'm going to ask our authors if you could give some advice for a writer hoping to be published one day. What would you like to share?
Well, I'll be happy to share. I don't want to do all the talking here, but
That's how I feel. So I'm waiting for you.
would you like to, Mary, would you like to go first, or Sarah? Okay, well, if you want to be published, I think if you have a desire to do something, I believe God has given you the talent. I think desire equals talent, especially if that desire gets stronger and stronger. So if you want to be published, the first thing I would say is cultivate your relationship with Jesus Christ and just get so close to him through his word. As Christian writers, we have the obligation to write truth, because truth is what sets people free, but we need to know truth ourselves. So I think it's critically important to immerse ourselves in the Word of God and really get to know the Word of God so that we can discern truth from error. And then that's the primary thing, that relationship with Jesus Christ, because it is out of that relationship that your writing will flow. And then in practical everyday terms, then learn the craft of writing. Do whatever you can, depending on the type of writing God has called you to do, to learn all you can about that. Also, I would suggest that you join writers' organizations in your genre and get to know more mature writers who can mentor you and can help you along the journey. So that's what I would suggest as a way of getting started.
Awesome. And also, just to kind of jump in, and I do feel like this question, this other question from the audience is closely related to this, and I'm going to direct this to Sarah. There's a question about time, how to give time to writing. Heather says, as a homeschool mom, it often feels like time I give to writing is time I'm not giving to my family or other ministries. So along that same vein of encouragement for an aspiring writer, how do you balance time and life and children?
Yeah, well, I wrote part-time as a homeschool mom for 20 years before I'm just now starting to write full-time. So, and I think that's normal, or in the range of normal for a lot of people, that writing I wrote a lot during nap times, where some people get up really early, to write. Finding those little spaces. Your mothering is your main ministry. I mean, I would never sacrifice that for anything. You have a short window to be mom, and you have a much longer window to write. So you can do the writing later. But also, if writing is life-giving to you, then you need to make time for it too. So it's, you do have to balance that. If it's something that is giving your spirit life, then you don't want to cut that out and say, no, I have to, do these other more important things because it's selfish to write. It's not selfish. If that's something that the Lord put in you and it is something that is giving you life, then it is something that is going to be life-giving to others as well. So yeah, I spent years and years, finding little time here and a little time there, and it doesn't have to be these huge hunks of time. So you can get rid of that ideal of sitting, in front of a computer for, 5-hour blocks or whatever your, picture of what a real author is. Being an author looks a whole bunch of different ways. I mean, everybody does it differently, and it's all valid and it's all okay.
Right.
Awesome.
True.
Okay. Well, we're coming down to the last few minutes, and I do want to get the last question in from our audience. Janice has asked, has anyone ever written about conflict in views between people in different age groups in current times? People who have different backgrounds, values, and backgrounds. I would imagine, based on some of the themes of the stories, that you have some thoughts. How about we ask Terry I'm sorry to just put you on the spot right now, but I'm trying to make sure we all get a chance here.
Yeah, I was trying to think about it. I think the one I was talking about with the female Christian writer that's not out yet, I think that those books, they have some different generational issues, and it's mostly, a lot of it is about, you know, older women and worried about their younger, either children or people that they know that have kind of struggled or not, you know, they've lost their faith or never had a strong faith. So there's some of those kind of conflicts. And then one of the middle grade reader fiction series that I have, it shows a little bit of that. I guess another one I have is got a lot of other issues like foster parenting and adoption and stuff like that, that's between children and their parents. So it's kind of, some of those are cross-generational and deal with faith issues as well.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to thank all three of you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to come and share with our audience and answer questions and talk about your writing journeys and your stories. You know, as I look at all three of you and your bios and how you have had and are having intergenerational impact, how you are committed to using your writing ministry to help build the church and bring people to Christ. I just want to applaud and encourage you and thank you for being faithful to the gift that God has placed in you. And as we close out, I do want to give all three of you a quick moment to tell the readers how they can connect with you, learn more about you. This is your chance to get your little, you know, your shine in here on how readers can connect with you going forward and learn about what you're working on next.
Well, I want to thank you, Leslie, for being such a great moderator. I
Yes,
really appreciate it. You can learn more about me and my writing at MaryAnnDiorio.com. There's a lot of information there that should answer most of your questions. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a blessing to be with you.
I've got a Facebook page just in my name, Terry Overton, on Facebook. And then I also have webpage authorterryoverton.com. So you can find out what I'm doing and where book signings are and so forth on that page.
And I'm at sarah-hanks.com. Sarah with the little dash, hanks.com. And that's where you can get that free Christmas story if you want to. I mean, my books are on Amazon too, but you can find them on that and a lot of behind the scenes stuff about my books too. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as author Sarah Hanks.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I pray God's blessings on you. And for all the future writers and aspiring writers out in the audience, just know you never know where God can take you. Just be faithful with what he has given you in your hand right now and trust him, as Marianne said earlier, to do the work. I'm paraphrasing. So thank you, everyone. Good night and stay well, safe out here. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you,